Yet again today on the floor of the House of Representatives, we had another show vote to make people feel good about themselves by passing a bill that says anti-Semitism in the title. When we want to insert the government into what you're thinking and what motivates you, you are empowering that which should never be empowered. The ability of the government to police thought, to police speech, to police your views.
That was Chip Roy, a Republican member of the House of Representatives. And he is absolutely correct. Now, what was he talking about? Well, the House just passed a censorious bill that would codify a federal definition of anti-Semitism. I just want to remind everyone before I continue further, whether you like it or not, our First Amendment rights, the freedom of speech, includes hate speech. It includes anti-Semitic speech. I might despise anti-Semitic speech, I might despise hate speech, but in America, you have the right to spew that hatred. Now, with that in mind, right-wing politicians and media figures are the most furious about the passage of this bill in the House. They've been the loudest in going around in the media to talk about how much they hate it. The bill is called the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act. It passed 320 to 91. Let that sink in. Only 70 Democrats and 21 Republicans voted against the bill. Notably, dissenters include the Squad, of course, Maxwell Frost, Ro Khanna. On the Republican side, you have Paul Gosar. I hate giving someone like Paul Gosar any credit, but he deserves credit. Also, keep in mind that he's got some hateful views, so he might be thinking about himself here.
That might be a little bit of self-preservation on that one, but.
You also have Lauren Boebert, Matt Gaetz, and Marjorie Taylor Greene voting against this bill. There's currently no federal definition of what counts as anti-Semitism, and it's worth getting into what the bill does and why it's so problematic, other than the fact that it's censorious and unconstitutional. So the bill amends that by adopting the definition used by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, or IHRA, they use their standard essentially to model this legislation. And to put it mildly, their definition has some very serious problems. So look, it starts off reasonably enough. Anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred toward Jews. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed toward Jewish or non-Jewish individuals and or their property, toward Jewish community institutions and religious facilities. No problems there, but then the IHRA lists some examples of what would in fact count as anti-Semitism under their definition, and a few of them are concerning. So let's go through them. Denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination, example by claiming that the existence of a state of Israel is a racist endeavor. So that is a political view, a political belief. And you might disagree with it, but the idea that the government can punish you for expressing those beliefs, for having those opinions, is concerning to say the least, right? Applying double standards by requiring of it a behavior not expected or demanded of any other democratic nation.
That's absurd. That's so broad. You could literally call any criticism of Israel unfair, quote unquote unfair, because, well, you didn't say it about Botswana. That's it, you're an anti-Semite and you're now banned. This is the most unconstitutional bill I've ever seen.
Pausing here to deliver some honest truth as we do in our news coverage as well. TYT is facing challenges, guys, as the entire industry is. You know who could make the difference? You. If you hit the join button below, it's gonna make all the difference and keep us in business. We appreciate you, thank you.
Now, the part that really ruffled the feathers of conservatives was this. Using the symbols and images associated with classic anti-Semitism, so examples, Jews killing Jesus or blood libel, to characterize Israel or Israelis, drawing comparisons of contemporary Israeli policy to that of the Nazis. So people on the far right, like Charlie Kirk, for instance, and Tucker Carlson were pretty furious about that. I wanna jump ahead to their statements about that before I go to conservatives who I think were a little more concerned about protecting free speech. Charlie Kirk said, did the House of Representatives just make parts of the Bible illegal? Tucker Carlson said, yes, the New Testament. So do you want to address this part of it, Cenk, before I go to the free speech component that other conservatives are worried about?
Yeah, look, so tons of the things that they've got in the definition are concerning, right? Like I wouldn't want any, for example, what they're referring to is saying, oh, the Jews killed Jesus, which is, I think, one of the dumber, I mean, all the anti-Semitic tropes are dumb, but that's among the dumbest ones because Jesus was Jewish. So how could you possibly blame Jews for killing Jesus who was Jewish? And it's not true, the Romans did it, yeah, blah, blah, blah. I don't need to get into it, it's absurd, okay? But so that's why they're concerned. They're like, whoa, 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 okay? Now we need to be able to say that the Jews killed Jesus, okay? That's part of the issue here. Now in terms of blood libel, well, wait a minute, that can go in two different directions. And this, now we're getting to the core of the problem in this bill. So traditional blood libel is usually almost always Christian communities that said that Jews were killing Christian babies and drinking their blood. Sound a little like QAnon? Yeah, that's kind of where QAnon got it, this anti-Semitic trope that's been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years, right? So that is among the worst things you can say, most clearly anti-Semitic, etc. But now, pro-Israel supporters are saying, if you say that Israel is killing anyone unnecessarily, blood libel.
And the consequences.
Well, then you literally can never criticize Israel.
I mean, I think that's the point, Cenk.
Of course, that's the point. They're literally making it illegal to criticize a foreign government.
And what would the consequences be, right? Well, and by the way, of course, this passed in the House. It would need to pass in the Senate. It would need to be signed by Biden, which I have no doubt he would sign. But if it was challenged in the courts, it's unconstitutional. You can't punish speech in America, even hate speech, believe it or not. So the bill would allow the Department of Education to cut off funding to academic institutions that tolerate behavior seen as anti-Semitic under that definition. Okay, if it were to pass and get signed into law.
Yeah, and now let's talk about, wait, does this apply to everyone or only Israel?
Israel.
Okay, so if, for example, Muslims are deeply offended.
Oh, that's okay.
Why is it okay to offend us? Now, are Muslims from time to time offended in America? Are we sometimes the victim of horrible Islamophobic stereotypes? I've been called a terrorist literally thousands of times. So whose funding can I block? Oh no, Muslims don't count at all. You could offend them all day long, you could say anything you want. And how about Christians? Oh, Christians you can offend all you want, no problem at all.
Listen, in this context, no one should matter. Based on our Constitution, no one matters in regard to special protections from feeling offended.
That's exactly what I'm getting to, guys. So this, I think this potentially makes anti-Semitism worse, not better, okay? Because you're saying the only country in the world you cannot criticize is Israel. And we're gonna pretend it's because you're offending Jews in America, and that's the only people you can't offend. You can offend every other American. Don't do that, don't do that. That's not gonna help Jewish people at all, at all. It's a terrible idea. Even Ben Shapiro is against this.
Yeah.
Okay, and the reality is, like, why did they pass such an absurdly unconstitutional law? The great majority of Democrats are like, oh yeah, who cares about it? Democracy's on the line, but we'll shred the Constitution. And of course, no article mentions that maybe, just maybe, $100 million from AIPAC might affect these politicians. But by the way, if you say that after the bill passes the Senate and is signed by Biden, what I just said might be illegal. Illegal in America, even though it is actually absolutely true. Last thing here, I mean, imagine this hypothetical where Turkish Americans spend $100 million in campaign contributions, and with these giant numbers, almost all the Democrats, all the Republicans are like, oh, of course, no one is allowed to criticize Turks in America because they're offended. And like, so you called Cenk a terrorist, that used to be Tuesday, now it's illegal. I mean, It's absurd. It's insanity.
So Matt Walsh said the vast majority of Republicans just voted for a bill to criminalize criticisms of the Israeli government. If the bill passes, you will be guilty of hate speech if you apply double standards to the government of Israel or accuse it of genocide. This is honestly one of the most insane pieces of legislation I've ever seen. And he, of course, works very closely with a staunch defender and supporter of Israel, and that person, of course, is Ben Shapiro. Luckily, he agrees, saying, well, he agrees in a way where you end up disagreeing with him. But he says, our campuses are left-wing activism training centers. Remove their taxpayer funding. West Virginia minors should not subsidize gender studies major Hamas fans.
None of that makes any sense.
Yeah, seriously. Okay, but he says the solution is not to pass a bad bill, adding yet more free speech violations to the giant free speech violation that is Title 6. Yeah, and then I really appreciate Batia Ungar-Sargon. I do disagree with her on Israel. However, she's one of these people who's a good faith actor, will concede when it makes sense, and you can actually have a conversation with her. And she actually made your point, Cenk, and I really want to give her credit for it. She says, it's nice to see bipartisan support for Jews, but this congressional bill to expand the definition of anti-Semitism is bad for the US and bad for Jews. This country was literally founded on the idea that there should be no government reprisals for speech, including hate speech. And she's right about that, so I give her a lot of credit.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.